So we're back with The Secret of the Golden Flower, and we're in chapter 4, circulation of light and making the breathing rhythmical. Do you want to read, Daniel, or want me to?
Yeah, how about we switch off?
Okay, cool. I'll do the first paragraph.
Yep.
Master Lu Tzu said, "The decision must be carried out with a collected heart and not seeking success. Success will then come of itself." In the first period of release, there are chiefly two mistakes: indolence, aka laziness or lethargy, and distraction. But that can be remedied. The heart must not enter into the breath too completely. Breathing comes from the heart. What comes out of the heart is breath. As soon as the heart stirs, there develops breath energy. Breath energy is originally transformed activity of the heart. When our ideas go very fast, like when we drink coffee, they imperceptibly pass into fantasies, which are always accompanied by the drawing of a breath, because this inner and outer breathing hangs together like echo and tone. I love that. Daily, we draw innumerable breaths and have an equal number of fantasies, and thus the clarity of the spirit ebbs away as wood dries out and ashes die.
So then, should a man have no imaginings in his mind? One cannot be without imaginings. Should one not breathe? One cannot do without breathing. The best way is to make a medicine of the illness. Since heart and breath are mutually dependent, the circulation of the light must be united with the rhythm of breathing. For this, light of the ear is above all necessary. There is light of the eye and a light of the ear. The light of the eye is the united light of the sun and moon outside. The light of the ear is the united seed of sun and moon within. The seed is thus the light in crystallized form. Both have the same origin and are different only in name. Therefore, understanding, ear, and clarity, eye, are one and the same effective light.
Let's come back to that later. Let's keep going. In sitting down, after lowering the lids, one uses the eyes to establish a plumb line and then shifts the light downward. But if the transposition downward is not successful, then the heart is directed towards listening to the breathing. One should not be able to hear with the ear the outgoing and intaking of the breath. What one hears is that it has no tone. As soon as it has tone, the breathing is rough and superficial and does not penetrate into the open. Then the heart must be made quite light and insignificant. The more it is released, the less it becomes. The less it is, the quieter. All at once, it becomes so quiet that it stops. Then the true breathing is manifested, and the form of the heart comes to consciousness. If the heart is light, the breathing is light. For every movement of the heart affects breath energy. If breathing is light, the heart is light. For every movement of breath energy affects the heart. In order to steady the heart, one begins by taking care of the breath energy. The heart cannot be influenced directly. Therefore, the breath energy is used as a handle, and this is what is called maintenance of the concentrated breath energy.
Children, do you not understand the nature of movement? Movement can be produced by outside means. It is only another name for mastery. One can make the heart move merely by running. Should one not also be able to bring it to rest by concentrated quietness? The great holy ones who knew how the heart and breath energy mutually influence one another, have thought out an easier procedure in order to help posterity.
In the book of the elixir, it is said, the hen can catch her eggs, or the hen can hatch her eggs because her heart is always listening. That is an important magic spell. The hen can hatch the eggs because of the energy of heat. But the energy of the heat can only warm the shells. It cannot penetrate into the interior. Therefore, she conducts this energy inward with her heart. This she does with her hearing. In this way, she concentrates her whole heart. Then the heart penetrates, the energy penetrates, and the chick receives the energy of the heat and begins to live. Therefore, a hen, when at times she leaves her eggs, always has the attitude of listening with bent ear. Thus, the concentration of the spirit is not interrupted. Because of concentration of the spirit suffers no interruption, neither does the energy of heat suffer interruption day or night, and the spirit awakens to life. The awakening of the spirit is accomplished because the heart has first died. When a man can let his heart die, then the primal spirit wakes to life. To kill the heart does not mean to let it dry and wither away, but it means that it has become undivided and gathered into one.
The Buddha said, when you fix your heart on one point, then nothing is impossible for you. The heart easily runs away, so it is necessary to concentrate it by means of breath energy. Breath energy easily becomes rough, therefore it has to be refined by the heart. When that is done, can it then happen that it is not fixed?
The two mistakes of indolence and distraction must be combated by quiet work that is carried on daily without interruption. Then success will certainly be achieved. If one is not seated in meditation, one will often be distracted without noticing it. To become conscious of the distraction is the mechanism by which to do away with distraction. Indolence of which a man is conscious and indolence of which he is unconscious are 1,000 miles apart. Unconscious indolence is real indolence. Conscious indolence is not complete indolence because there is still some clarity in it. Distraction comes from letting the mind wander about. Indolence comes from the mind's not yet being pure. Distraction is much easier to correct than indolence. It is as in sickness. If one feels pain and irritations, one can help them with remedies, but indolence is like a disease that is attacked by lack of realization. Distraction can be counteracted. Confusion can be straightened out, but indolence and lethargy are heavy and dark. Distraction and confusion at least have a place, but in indolence and lethargy, the anima alone is active. In distraction, the animus is still present, but in indolence, pure darkness rules. If one becomes sleepy during meditation, that is an effect of indolence. Only breathing serves to overcome indolence. Although the breath that flows in and out through the nose is not the true breath, the flowing in and out of the true breath takes place in connection with it.
While sitting, one must therefore always keep the heart quiet and the energy concentrated. How can the heart be made quiet? By the breath. Only the breath must be conscious of the flowing in and out of the breath. It must not be heard with the ears. If it is not heard, then the breathing is light. If light, it is pure. If it can be heard, then the breath energy is rough. If rough, then it is troubled. If it is troubled, then indolence and lethargy develop, and one wants to sleep. This is self-evident.
How to use the heart correctly during breathing must be understood. It is a use, it is a use without use. One should only let the light fall quite gently on the hearing. This sentence contains a secret meaning. What does it mean to let the light fall? It is the spontaneous radiation of the light of the eyes. The eye looks inward only and not outward. To sense brightness without looking outward means to look inward. It has nothing to do with an actual looking within. What does hearing mean? It is the spontaneous hearing of the light of the ear. The ear listens inwardly only and does not listen to what is outside. To sense brightness without listening to what is outside is to listen inwardly. It has nothing to do with actually listening to what is within. In this sort of hearing, one hears only that there is no sound. In this kind of seeing, one sees only that no shape is there. If the eye is not looking outward and the ear is not hearkening outward, they close themselves and are inclined to sink inward. Only when one looks and hearkens inward does the organ not go outward nor sink inward. In this way, indolence and lethargy are done away with. That is the union of the seed and the light of the sun and moon.
If, as a result of indolence, one becomes sleepy, one should stand up and walk about. When the mind has become clear, one should sit down again. If there is time in the morning, one may sit during the burning of an incense stick. That is best. In the afternoon, human affairs interfere, and one can therefore easily fall into indolence. It is not necessary, however, to have an incense stick, but one must lay aside all entanglements and sit quite still for a time. In the course of time, there will be success without one becoming indolent and falling asleep. I guess
Cool.
I'll keep going.
Oh,
wait, I guess
that's it. Yeah. The thing that I love about this one is it's so clear. There's no symbolism really mentioned in this or anything, and it finally gives us like the experiential handle, as they call it, to how to keep the fixation.
Mm-hmm.
And also kind of does away with, okay, well, these are the distractions and these are the lethargy, and really those are the two hardest things to overcome in meditation. We get frustrated because we are distracted and we fall asleep, really, which is very common in meditating. So yeah, opening thoughts. What do you take out of this?
Well, the first, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of content in this that I feel I really grasp, just in terms of the heart as this center place, this barometer for how it is that we are experiencing our own internal reality, as the anchor point that allows the other senses to shut down, shut off, and find their, the heart kind of creates a boundary, or does create a boundary, and all the thoughts are gathered into this, the abode of the heart. And this one pointedness can happen in this relationship between the breath and this frequency that the heart is holding. One part that I am still wanting to tease out a bit is the relationship between the ear, hearing, and seeing. And particularly on the last paragraph on page 43.
How does the heart correctly during breathing be understood?
Yes, and when it says this sentence contains a secret meaning, what does it mean to let the light fall? It is the spontaneous radiation of the light of the eyes. The eye looks inward only and not outward. To sense brightness without looking outward means to look inward. It has nothing to do with an actual looking within. So in that sentence, I thought I understood it. You know, there's light that comes out from our eyes. And then when we're looking inward, then we see the light inside. But here, is it actually saying that? It says it has nothing to do with an actual looking within. What does hearing mean? It is the spontaneous hearing of the light of the ear. The ear listens inwardly only and does not listen to what is outside. And for me, what, you know, so how to articulate this? At first I thought, okay, we're looking inward, there must be light inside. And we're hearing, then therefore we're hearing a sound outside that then we are perceiving inside. But I think what this is saying is that the origin of the sound is coming from within. That's the only place that we can actually perceive the sound, really, is the origin from within. Same with the light. We actually perceiving the light from within. What we're not doing is transposing the light or the sound within. Is that how you're understanding it too?
I think, to me, there's a strong vein of koan in the pointing of this description. When he says, let the light fall softly, to me, what that means is the subjectivity of the meditation, the I am here-ness of this meditation. Make that light. Not light like bright, but make it delicate. Make it as if the I am here is almost not even there. To the extent that I am seeing light or I am hearing sounds, becomes so thin that it's just seeing and it's just hearing itself.
I see.
And in doing that, the instruction to me here is, as it says, the light floods in through the eyes of its own accord. You don't have to try to make it happen. It just happens because of the rhythmic breathing that you've developed and because of the mental the fixation. When you have these two holdings, this process, by focusing, remembering to do this, and then also remembering to make the breath very gentle, make it so quiet that you don't hear any ujjayi breathing like we were taught in yoga class. We don't do that in this. We're supposed to make it so quiet and so effortless, to the extent that it doesn't even feel like you're breathing anymore. It feels like your heart beat itself is creating an inhale, exhale of its own accord. The lungs don't even necessarily feel like they're doing anything anymore. It's so autonomous.
Mm-hmm.
And what my experience has been with that is I'm able to do it for a little while, but then all of a sudden I feel like I have to take a deep breath. Like I feel like I get short of breath. And then all of a sudden my breath gets coarse again. But when I'm riding that thread, it really closes in, and the meditation gets very potent, and then it falls off, right? So
yeah. So the syncopation of the heart and the breath is as it describes earlier, is the tone and the echo of the pulsation of the heart, which should reflect the wings of the lungs.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. And yeah, so it seems like a short breath to me. It almost feels like a soft breath of fire, in terms of the rapidity that you need, or the pace. But the pace is difficult to maintain, because then as soon as it starts to become loud, then that's not the point either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you what's your take on like an example? Do you try and fall into how do you try and fall into the rhythmic breathing that they're describing?
Hmm.
Is it
Wow.
or maybe what hangups do you find yourself falling into in trying to do that?
Yeah, similar to you. I have a hard time breathing, feeling like I'm getting enough oxygen. And because my heartbeat, about once per second. So that means breath needs to be, and that just to me feels fast. It's faster than I've ever done in a long period of meditation before. Um, and if anything, my training has been around is lengthening the breath
Mm-hmm.
throughout meditation, especially lengthening the exhale. And what
Sure.
I usually, a golden number that I usually go for is 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. So I'm wondering if there is, because it doesn't necessarily, for me, describe it has to syncopate.
Oh yeah, no, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Right.
But there can be, our own, we can find that own rhythm within it
Mm-hmm.
where there's maybe 4 breaths or maybe 5 per beat, or no, 5 beats per breath, but still having the tone echo quality there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good one. I do know it's difficult to maintain any sort of rhythmic breathing. Doesn't matter what kind of breathing it is. It's not an easy task, but it does concentrate the mind very well.
Mm-hmm.
The heart mind, the emotional mind.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've benefited from on that level is practicing with chanting and doing 2 verses to the breath. All of a sudden, you already have something built in. As long as you know what you're chanting and you have a degree of rhythmic flow with what you're chanting, it's like you get to the last verse and you start chanting again. And that becomes the regular rhythm of itself. And no matter no matter where my mind goes, whether I actually understand what I'm chanting or whatever, the breath by itself creates a meditative space in my practice, and there's benefit there. Now, when you take away mantra and you're just doing a silent meditation, there's a lot of room all of a sudden to really pay attention to the unconscious activities. And I find myself holding my breath a lot, way more than I ever realized, because I love to inhale and then hold it and feel that fullness of openness, because it's kind of like stretching, like doing one of these things or whatever. When you have a full full lungs with full of air, there's kind of like a wow, I'm kind of have a nice day kind of feels really good. So I kind of want to stay there, but then I realize that becomes a habit, and the rhythmicness of this process is a huge part of grabbing the reins of the heart. And I think it was in chapter 3, in one of the past chapters, it talks about the ability, maybe actually it might be the next chapter, um, the ability to stop the heart. And this is a technique that different traditions of yogis have done. Um, and in some ways, this is moving in that direction, to be able to still the heart to the extent that it is still. And there isn't an inward flow and there isn't an outward flow. There's a suspension of consciousness, and you're suspended in time and space. You're sort of in samadhi, really. And I think that they're sort of also pointing towards that reality as well here.
Hmm.
But
Right.
but yeah, I've been definitely listening more and more to my breath lately, and probably maybe a little too much. But it's interesting how the distraction is much more deal withable than the lethargy.
Mhm.
Any thoughts on that? Or
Yeah. Wow. I'm just tuning into my heart right now, practicing as you're talking. Ah, yeah, I really like this idea of the the rhythmic breath being able to totally work in relationship with our frequency of emotion and feeling and emoting. And this idea when the breath is not rhythmical or we're holding it and it's feeling disjointed, it's often, as maybe it's super obvious, but that's when our emotions are also in that realm. And it's hard to know. And I think it's interesting they use this chicken egg metaphor because it's hard to know what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Is it that our emotions are being controlled by the breath, or is our breath controlling the emotions? And what I like here is that the chicken is with the hearing, and her own heartbeat penetrates into the heart of the egg, or gives it life, right? So there's this life-giving quality here that helps to regulate the breath with the emotion, the frequency of feeling, which then helps us come back to center. And it's hard to know, for instance, um, if it's always the breath that can somehow wrangle in the emotions, or whether it's actually just the attuning to the heart itself, and listening to the heart first, as opposed to using the breath as a whip to the heart. You must be this thing. You must conform to my rhythm, because that's not what the chicken does to the egg. The chicken is all about this subtle receptivity there.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's a very delicate thing. But when somebody's feeling triggered, in our day-to-day life, or even in a meditation for that matter, desires coming up, frequencies are coming up, fantasies or lethargy, distractions, all that. It's hard to know what the first step is in towards of recalibrating that heart, so that it's at one pointed focus, and that you can feel this power is there.
Mhm.
And that's why the chicken metaphor is great, because we can feel the deep listening of the mother hen, and how that listening and it's almost like a magnetic, or just this beautiful radiation of her own love that she's tuning in with on this very internal level, that is the medicine that helps then recalibrate, as opposed to a pattern that I know I've gotten into a lot. I know what the breathing exercises is when I'm triggered, or I need to do. Now it's this thing and this thing and this thing, and it can feel very commanding on the heart. Vayu, right? This things are, vayu is disturbed, and the breath is disturbed, and therefore you're using that same disturbed frequency to then try to tame the heart. So I think the breath is only as useful as we are able to be in the receptivity of listening and
Mm.
use the breath as the tool, but the master is always that listening piece.
Mhm.
The ear, right? The ear and the inner sound, and it, like you were saying, just being so subtle where it's hardly you that's the one that's listening, but there is a deep listening that's happening.
Mhm.
And then also the quietness of the breath too falls into that listening, because you have to listen to the breath. It can't be one of these
Right. Yeah.
to calm down,
Right. Right.
which is often what's being demonstrated out there in a lot of self-help breathing, yogic breathing techniques that are supposed to calm the nervous system. But man, those can really increase the nervous system's regulation,
Yeah.
create more fight or flight response.
That's right. You know, I know a lot of people who've done the Wim Hof method and been like, I'm not doing that again. I got a panic attack. Yeah, I don't like how that feels. And personally, I do. I tend to like it because it's very invigorating. And then after doing a bunch of vigorous breaths, then I can sit in the pause and really appreciate that stillness. But again, having juxtapositions of extreme opposites allows you to listen to what needs to happen in the present
Mhm.
moment, you know.
Mhm.
And so having this say, now just breathe naturally. And after practicing all these things, it's like, well, what's natural? And the answer is listen.
Mhm.
You'll know once you listen.
Right.
The thing I liked about the chicken aspect is it's like the chicken is the animus and the eggs are the embryo that need to be cultivated.
Mhm.
And these lethargy distractions are are anima possessed uh, things, tendencies, ideas, desires that prevent this animus to re regain its dominion within the heart.
Mhm.
And the cool thing, I was thinking about this because I remember we were talking in one of I think the first video, I was saying, do whatever it takes to stay awake, even if it's focusing on your desires. And then later on, it says, don't focus on your desires, focus on the thoughts. And I think that there's, I thought about this and I sort of meditated on it. I think there's still a thread there in that a desire is just a thought as well. The only difference between a thought and a desire is a desire deep down is still just a thought. It's just dressed in tendencies. It's dressed in the uh, in a charged, repetitive relationship. It means more. It's a thought that means more than just an average thought. We hang on to it. And if you think about compulsive activity, or you think about addictions, all of a sudden it makes sense. You follow me? Like when you think about something that you some compulsive activity, like even just something as insignificant as a bug bite, you know that you're not supposed to scratch a bug bite,
Mhm.
but it itches, and that itching is a thought, and it's caught up in the body, and it's a great practice of thinking something else instead of thinking I'm thinking this itches. I'm thinking this. You keep on coming back to it. Eventually you do it. You finally just give in and you gratify it. And it generally gets worse. But the point to me here is deep down, it's just a thought. And through the cultivation of staying focused on the thing that matters more than that thought, it takes time to draw the energy away from that compulsion into something that's more holistic, something more comprehensive, something not possessed of the anima.
Mm.
So
What if a thought isn't associated with a sensation? So, for instance, a fantasy. How would you differentiate that from an addiction that might have more, or a compulsion that might have more of a bodily sensation associated with it?
I wouldn't. I would say they're ostensibly the same thing. One is based in the body, but the other one is essentially based in the body, but it may not be considered to be associated with a sensation. Like We have physical addictions and we have non-physical addictions. Like people can be addicted to gambling, and there's no chemical that you're actually ingesting to make you addicted to gambling, right? It's just it's a function, something that you do. And so in the same way, that thing is a distraction, and it can get to the distraction to the extent that you do it and you can't help not doing it. But there has to be some sort of taking the breath and listening to the heart and knowing that this is okay. I'm okay. The breath and the heart there's a relationship there. And to that extent, as that relationship improves with these meditations, they have an ability to overcome anything outside of it. And that's just my thought on it. What are your thoughts on it? Does that seem like Pollyanna-ish to you? Am I because I can see the other side of the argument, but as far as my experience goes, I think the meditation is that powerful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot there.
I mean, do you think
it really reminds me of Ramana Maharshi's primary teaching, which is to focus on the right side of the heart and to be in relationship with your breath, but to have a fixation here as opposed to fixating here. There's actually a fixation on this right part of the heart, not the physical heart, but the spiritual heart. And also there's this meditation that we use in my Jyotish lineage, which is a meditation of the moon, big moon that covers the entire heart that we're breathing life into. And then there's this other meditation that's associated with the setting sun and rising sun. That's associated with the in and out breath. And all of those are used slightly different. But interestingly, I find that this technique is all of the fundamental qualities of what a meditation is. And from a lot of different traditions that I've seen, it's a nice synthesis or even reduction, concentration. And at the center of that, there is this relationship between the rhythmical breath and the heart, and the subtlety of listening. And I agree. Yeah, I think it's tremendously powerful. And really where I feel most relaxed when I'm able to enter into that state. Mm-hmm. It really feels so nourishing for all parts of my being. And it doesn't always happen, but when it does, I feel very grateful. I'm in a sense of gratitude that I have the safety and the space and the time to even access this potentiality for even a moment. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's what I have to say about it.
For sure. And I think you bring up an interesting point of sometimes you can do it and sometimes you can't. And I think that the Pollyanna-ish aspect of what I was kind of feeling as I was saying that this is a solution to addictions and whatnot is that the difficulties in life are formidable. And most often in my experience, when I'm really going through something tough, meditation's very nearly impossible. Mm-hmm. Productive. Any sense of actually accomplishing a deep meditation's pretty much impossible because my emotions are just so disturbed. And that's why I think doing these practices are so important, so that we have some groundwork laid for when these moments happen. I'm thinking of Noah and the flood. You know, this meditation is building an ark for ourselves, so that when the flood comes, when something difficult happens in life, there's a raft, at least. Maybe there's maybe you know, an hour a day or something like that. It might be a nice ship. The more refined it becomes, you might actually have a nice big ark.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely valuable to have some sense of relationship cultivated for the heart when something tumultuous happens and the heart all of a sudden doesn't feel like it's rein-inable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point, man.
What what have been some of the hardest things about trying to practice this for you?
My incessant need to be saying a mantra.
Oh, totally same.
I mean, if it's not one, it's another.
No, same boat. I mean, I don't even know necessarily if that's a bad thing, though. Because the nature of the listening, I don't know, I might be wrong about that, but the nature of the listening to me is almost more a mode of perception. It's not seeing, it's not hearing, it's just there's a presence. And if mantras are happening, it's not necessarily creating, I don't think this book, they seem to me they're much more liberal about the instruction.
Mm-hmm.
They don't specifically tell you can't do mantras with it. that's my take.
Yeah. I agree. They don't say that they don't, but I do think that mantras, they churn energy in a different way than just sitting there being in the spaciousness of the heart cave and breathing into it and seeing your own heart as your teacher. There's something very intimate and personal about that, in ways that mantras, for me personally, yet I have much more of a rajasic point of view with mantras. And for those who don't know what rajasic means, it can be defined in many ways, but the way that I'm using it is using the mantra to achieve a specific thing. And the inherent nature of this meditation is effortless, as you described. And although, mantra meditations, some are designed that way, but the way that I use them is I am really trying to work on this particular aspect of myself. And then when that one's done, I'm trying to work on this particular aspect of my life, or using it as a tool to create protection or a feeling of health and harmony. Or for this one to deal with, we were talking about before we got online, Rahu, and this concept of Rahu, which is maybe for a later discussion, but to rein in the influence of Rahu, to surrender at the feet of the Divine Mother. So there's a lot of different ways that these mantras can be used. And what I very much enjoy about this style of meditation that has become, for better or for worse, the without mantra, breath oriented meditation, mindfulness meditation is now how the Western audience has reduced it down into taken its traditional context away. But these meditations where there isn't necessarily a mantra or any sort of there's a lot of fixation in the meditation, but shall I say a meditation that is focusing on the breath as the point of focus, along with, a variety of other things that we've discussed. Where am I going with this? I'm going in the sense that there is some sort of subjectivity and beauty that can emerge when we don't have an agenda for a meditation, or we don't have a procedure, we don't have a checklist. There is nothing to get done. There's nothing. It creates this beautiful space, and from that beautiful space, you are surrendering to your own heart as your teacher. And
Beautiful.
there's something there that I really, in my own practice, want to create more space for, because when it's there, it becomes magnetic, it becomes radiant. But then again, to do it well is difficult. And so the mantras and all of these other techniques are just so we can get to that state. And then from that state, get further and further into different aspects of consciousness. So what I'm trying to say is that I think it's a great place to spend more time. And also there's lots of values in the tools that allow us to get to that place as well.
Right. Yeah, it's funny that you say all that. Your description of it reminded me just now of why I liked this chapter so much. After reading it, I all of a sudden had this whole new invigorated desire to double down and do more of it, because it was as if my heart was sort of really in need of lotion. Like I was imagining my heart being this kind of coarse, as it describes with your breathing, being rough and dry from some deserty, situation. And this practice is this salve of just like soothing it with some sort of, coconut oil or something that just all of a sudden makes it feel inhabitable and desirable to inhabit. Because the inhabiting, being in the heart or listening to the heart at first is claustrophobic. It's an intense place to put your energy, and going through that discomfort just kind of speaks to what I was talking about before, these addictive tendencies of our mind. These addictions are really things that pull us out of our heart and make us feel like there's something that makes us feel incomplete. And being in the heart and nourishing the heart and cultivating this relationship between the breath and the heart creates this inhabitability that heals all those things. And it made me feel so sure about that in that moment, that I'm like, this is what I should be doing my whole life. I should be spending every hour of the day. I get overly exuberant about stuff. Like,
yeah, but I it's like to bring to your point earlier, how we're building a ship so that we can sail on the seas of life when the waters rise, right? When the inevitable suffering that will come for each and every one of us because of the nature of our existence. Yeah, the cool thing about this practice is the relationship between the heart and the breath. That's really it's so good, and just to go back and to reread these sections, all the subtleties of the listening and the vision, and bringing the light in through the vision, and reducing the I am this or I am that, and then constantly fixating and focusing so that the breath can have this relationship. But in our day-to-day lives, we're driving a car, we're distracted, or we're talking to somebody and we're not actually really listening to them, or we're also not tuning into our own needs, what our own needs are in a particular moment. It's just a recalibration. It's a constant recalibration to our innermost center. That I find that the reason that a lot of people have walls around their heart is because the heart doesn't feel safe that you're present with it. And so the reason that walls are created, emotional barriers are created amongst us, is because we don't know how to listen to it. We don't know how to calibrate with it in order for us to respond to life and to meet life in a way that's from a place of heart-centered living. And so even by doing this technique, by listening and breathing with the heart, you're inviting a very intimate, personal part of yourself into the world of form in a way where it can feel safe and heard, which is not easy. It's not an easy task to do. But somehow, even though it's difficult, it's so satisfying and gives a life a different quality of meaning to it. And next thing you know, as opposed to your purpose needing to be defined by all of these factors that culture, society are telling us that we need to be defined by, you can calibrate to the question of, am I living in relationship where my heart and my breath are aligned, and somehow derive purpose and meaning from that, because you know that your life is going to unfold in a deeper way. You know, the word surrender also comes to mind. You're surrendering to your heart. You're surrendering to this aspect of the divine that is potentially speaking to you through your heart. I mean, that's a different conversation and my interpretation, right? It doesn't necessarily say that. That's
Well,
more Christian mystic point of view, but it infers it.
yeah, actually, I like the. I think that's fully valid, and it could be completely not a different subject. Could you do you want to delve into that a little bit, because that sounds really interesting to me.
Sure. So yeah, the flame that exists within the heart, there's all sorts of different flames that exist in our consciousness, but the one that exists in the heart, in the Christian Gnostic or Christian mystic point of view, is the center place where the cross meets, and is the place where we are constantly surrendering our soul to the eternal, to Christ eternal, which is giving me shivers at the moment just talking about it, because it's a concept that is deep and I don't fully even admit to understanding. But there's this constant surrendering that's happening, and you're surrendering to your heart, but not in a way where you're cowering to your heart, but you're allowing it to be seen more, and you're exposing your soft part, and then thereby strengthening the cross of your back as strong. And so they go together, the strength of the spine with the vulnerability of the heart. And then thereby, you know, you're listening to something constantly, and there's a sense of surrender. You know, even, you know, and this is a constant metaphor in most spiritual traditions, but that metaphor for me has a poignancy to it, particularly when we're going about our day. And there's so many things that are influencing us, and it's so easy to not listen to a very subtle frequency.
Right.
And it's that, and I keep using this word calibration, but there's no other word that I can think of that's better, because we're dealing with all of these vibrations that are outside of us that feel like they're hitting us with a 10-pound brick on our head. The blind students I work with, navigating them through traffic with a cane, they're constantly in tune with a subtle frequency, because their vision is constantly inwards, right? They don't have any external vision. So their light is here, and their sound is also here, and it feels like all of these sounds are there and just right on top of them. And we also can feel that way. And this calibration of the breath and the subtlety of listening to the heart, although subtle, it can become very strong if it's done in a place where it's easy to do at first, or let's say not easy to do, but easier to do, where you're creating a very nice environment for this to happen. And slowly over time, it's strengthened. This also reminds me of the centering prayer. You know, for folks that know the centering prayer, has a similar, it's actually very distinct, but in its own way. What's that?
How does that go?
Thomas Kettering is a Christian mystic, and I believe that's his name. And he has a invocation of the Lord, and it's just a mantra, a one-word mantra. But the basic premise, and for those curious, I highly recommend checking it out. You're constantly surrendering to the Lord through this one word, over and over and over again. You're just surrendering to, and the word can be anything. And you're surrendering to the divine, and that's it. And the divine lives in the heart.
Yeah.
It's not your will, it's God's will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. By the way, are you hearing this bird?
I am.
As you started talking, it was definitely liking whatever it was you're saying, because really beautiful singing. But I think just to bring this back to the book, because what you're describing is this remembrance, right? In intense moments, really, especially, is the fluidity or the inclusivity, I would even say, of this rhythmic breathing, because the rhythmic breathing is a method of remembrance that becomes so strong that no matter how intense the chatter to screaming of the world outside, there is this subtlety of listening that can still penetrate the cacophony.
Mm-hmm.
And this method, as it says in the book, it's the origin of all religions, because, as you said also, it's a really intimate thing. It's literally developing a relationship with your own heart. Like, it's so beautifully simple, and yet so intuitively understandable. We all know that this is the cross, as you said. This is the emotional center of our being, and to have a good meditative posture, to be erect while remaining open-hearted, is the pinnacle of the practice. It's that simple and it's that hard.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks for your sharing today, by the way. I hope I didn't,
likewise.
But all of the things that you brought up to me were completely not irrelevant. They're very relevant to this conversation. And so, yeah, thanks for sharing. And
yeah, thank you. It was really fun. It was helpful for me, just so you know, just to talk about these things, to verbalize these things, and remind myself more so than anyone else, just so the audience knows this is just me giving myself some love and a good pep talk here.
Absolutely. Yeah, and likewise.
Thank you so much for your insights. It really helped me clarify a few things.
Yeah, and there's tone and there's echo, and so it's a circular, it's a circulation of the light. So we're going to end it here. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back with chapter 5. What is it called? Which is also a short one. The mistakes during circulation of the light. So it'll be fun to be able to talk about the things to help improve as we encounter the obstacles of the process. So tune in for the next time, and keep circulating the light, I guess, till then. So great.